Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this 73rd episode of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Last time we began exploring the third subsection of the second introductory question, entitled The Manifesting Units of Consciousness. These units are the individual human, planetary, and solar lives, each unfolding the same inherent abilities for growth, but on progressively higher levels. This whole section of ToCF FD is stressing that the complete interrelatedness of how growth is achieved, right? He also tells us that no one of these stages or levels of being can develop without the others. It's because we're completely interrelated and internested. So you could say that the lesser lives that make up a human being are absolutely essential to our own development, just as we are essential to the development of those greater lives of which we are a part, and vice versa. We couldn't develop without those greater lives. So it's completely symbiotic in that way. We then took a look at how the logos of which our solar system is a part, the grand man of the heavens, which is our solar logos, a heavenly man or planetary logos, and a human being all demonstrate through 7 principles, with each lesser group embodying a principle in the group standing just above it, as shown here. Actually, this week I went back and created this chart. It really got into it. There's a chart that shows the higher part of this in ToCF, but I brought it down to as close as I could to an individual human being. So you see here we have from above to below, we have a logos of to which our solar system belongs. That is the logos of 7 solar systems. And then we have the level of solar systems made up of 7 planetary schemes, which are in turn made up of 7 chains. And those 7 chains are made up of 7 globes. Each globe is made up of 7 root races. Those root races are made up of 7 sub-races. And here's where I did a little more research. The sub-races are each made up of 7 branch races. And these branch races, this is where it gets a little more vague in terms of the specifics, can either be made up of nations, tribes, or coherent cultural groups. And this is where the divisions on the globe begin to distinguish themselves in accordance with these. All these are ruled by ray types, by the way. Then you have to go to the bottom, the end, the final, and of course it's not the final, but this is where the chart stops, which are the 7 human chakras of an individual human being. Now, between these tribes or cultural groups and the chakras of a human being, you have, it's just not described. The connecting tissue between these is not described. So I just put an indeterminate number of septenary levels. So you would have, who knows how many that connect a single human being to this tribal level. This could include maybe families, regions, or towns or cities, who knows. But in order to complete this. What they all have in common is they act as chakras for the next level up. Okay. Um, Okay. Yeah, a key detail in this listing is the fact that this, let's see, first of all, um, the text focuses on just 3 of these many nested septenary levels, like in the text that we're now reading, which are a solar logos, a planetary logos, and then all the way down to an individual human being. But as you can see in this chart, there are many intermediate levels between a planetary scheme and a human being. The key detail in this listing is the fact that our solar logos is the heart center within the greater logos of which he forms a part. Thus, he personifies the second ray of love wisdom, which colors all the levels beneath him. Next, DK gives us a tabulation that emphasizes the nature. Oh, I see a hand. Yeah, Nadell, go ahead.
With so much inter-migration, travel, intermarriage, etc., can you really have these distinct branch races today?
I think branch races, yes. And I think what do I know? But I think it becomes more amorphous after this. We know, for instance, that there are 7 continents. One is basically inactive at this time, and that's so at a physical level you can distinguish the geography on which these branch races would develop, right? But uh, the specific identity of these branch races becomes quite difficult to formulate, especially in modern times where there's, as you said, there's so much interrelatedness. It's really a synthetic activity that's going on. Yet I think at root there still are 7 branch races, and these are sequential. All of these are sequential. So which means that, especially when you get out into things like branch races, that they come into dominant influence, even though a number of them, though probably not all of them, would be coeval. They would exist at the same time. Um, yeah, and but actually getting down to identifying them. So, does this mean, for instance, you know, uh, the subraces we know, this is talked about a lot. After that, not so much. Subraces, we are definitely in the 5th Aryan subrace, the purpose of which is the development of mind. Well, DK also tells us that the Oriental races represent the 4th subrace, whereas the West or the Occidental represents the 5th subrace. But this doesn't hold with the idea, at least in my mind, of the development of manas, or the mental apparatus, because obviously both the Orient and the Occident are very much under this influence of the developing. So it becomes fuzzier or more difficult to uh, actually apply to the outer world. Obviously it does, but it's just we don't have the information. So these subraces, the branch races are, a septenary division of a subrace, which means we are in an undisclosed level of a branch race of this 5th root race. We, as far as I know, that's not revealed. Which branch race we're in, and then below that it becomes as you suggest, extremely confused, except for the perspective from on high, where these are archetypal or more energetic than manifesting, and then they can probably see the infusion of these uh, different groups with each other in terms of how they're manifesting on the planet. Um, yeah, that's really all I can say. Um, Fascinating, but it's always um, difficult to fill in the gaps, you know. And for us, it's these, you know, we're real clear on the seven human chakras, but the next two levels are not so clear at all, even the next three levels. Okay, anybody else? Let's see here. Okay, so next, DK gives us a tabulation that emphasizes the nature of the connection between causal, those that stand above, and manifested levels. For example, we're told that the grand man of the heavens evolves through here, evolving through the physical sun and the seven planets. So the above is depends on its evolution on that which lies below, on its septenary nature. This is universally true. The consciousness aspect, which represents the higher, always evolves through the form which it inhabits. So the SON, sun, evolves through the seven sacred planets and the physical sun that represent its outer form. Next, we take a look at the methods used by each of the seven planets to develop the particular cosmic principle that they represent within the body of the solar logos. That's a mouthful, but these methods include expansion, vibratory stimulation, magnetic interaction, cyclic progress, rotary repetition, and spiraling ascension. Each of these methods is itself sevenfold. For example, there are seven methods of expansion, each characterized by one of the seven rays. There are also seven methods of vibratory stimulation, seven methods of magnetic interaction, etc. You know, we might just pause for a second to realize that a treatise could be written on how these methods, differentiated by the seven rays, form the particular nature and quality of each of the seven sacred planets. I mean, you're basically talking about the way that the planets eventually achieve a place in the body, a chakra in the body of the solar logos. You know, DK just barely touches on it, but there's, as is so often the case in a treatise on cosmic fire, you almost get like chapter headings in these listings, right? It's just that the chapters aren't available, at least not to us. Next, we learned that the purpose of all these methods is to develop love wisdom through the utilization of form by means of active intelligence, resulting in full self-consciousness. This results in a perfected solar system, which DK describes as the, quote, form adequate to the needs of the indwelling spirit. So the form is vibratorily brought up to the qualitative level of the indweller, right? DK then invites the reader to develop a similar tabulation that relates a human being to his or her planetary logos, which we explored by means of this comparative chart. Again, very, very rudimentary. And that pretty much brings us up to where we left off last time. To begin this session, we'll back up just a little bit in order to get a sense of the context. The statement is, if we ask why 10 schemes, he's really turning a corner here. We're moving into a different area.
Francis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there were two questions, Barbara and Tom, or Tom, Barbara.
Okay, are they in the chat or did they raise their hand?
They raised their hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Who was first? Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, about the series of 7 from below, does this also mean analogically that there are 7 individual human beings who form an individual group or group soul, or is there any mention of this in DK's work?
Okay, I went to the same place because of the logic of it, right? You would think you would have to belong to a group of 7 humans. That would be the next logical step. That is not in any way mentioned or suggested anywhere that I could find, right? It also doesn't make, it doesn't particularly make sense. However, what you could put in the place of 7 human beings would be, quote unquote, a group, right? And of which you would develop group consciousness, and that the individual soul ray types within that group would represent possibly the chakras in that group, if that is even a relevant application. But that's the only thing I was able to do with it. Yeah. Specifically 7 human beings, as I said, no mention whatsoever. And I think it would more applicably relate to the 7 ray types of the members of the group, rather than specifically 7 particular members of the group, if you get my drift.
Yeah, that's one theory that I thought too. And then another is that perhaps there is some kind of group within group system also.
Well, there is, we're told that, and I couldn't include it in this. This is a very physical line here. There's also a kind of second aspect line, because DK tells us about, he literally tells us that there are 49 soul groups that become at the next subplane. I think it's third subplane of the mental plane. There are 49 soul groups that merge into 35 on the third or second subplane, that merge into 14 on the first, and then on the Buddhic plane merge into 7, which is the final configuration of groups. So they actually become, it's a synthesis of soul groups. Now, how does that relate to this? Well, obviously it does, but it's never interrelated by DK. He never tells us, for instance, the relationship of soul groups and subraces or branch races, but we could see how, all these subraces are characterized by ray type. For instance, our current subrace, the 5th, is characterized by the 5th ray. So you could see how 5th ray ashram or a 5th ray soul group would be particularly active during this Aryan root race, right? But we don't know more than that. To my knowledge, he never interrelates soul groups with this, except for in the general sense of numerologically, the numbers always are relevant. They're never just accidental. They're always relevant. So you have that, you know. Anyone else? I think Barbara, you also had her hand up. Is that correct?
Yes. So we have in the literature that the seven planetary logo create the root chakra of the cosmic being, about whom nothing can be said. So is that going from seven planetary schemes to seven solar systems? And then does it go immediately to the heart chakra, or are other chakras involved here?
Okay, so restate who it is that forms the root chakra of the one about whom not may be said.
My understanding it's the seven planetary logoi.
Of our solar system?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay, I'm not aware of that teaching. So that the problem is, just like we have a gap here between seven human chakras and the branch races, we have this indeterminate number. We also have an indeterminate number between this highest iteration, which is a logos of seven solar systems, and the one about whom not may be said. For instance, how many logoi of seven solar systems, so let me rephrase that. How many levels like these levels does it take to come up to a one about whom not may be said? Is it the very next level up? In other words, are there seven of these type of logoi, each formed by seven solar systems? Are there seven of those that make up a chakra in the one about whom not may be said? Or is there an intermediate stage, in other words, a further iteration? Both of those, either of those hypotheses, to me suggests that the logos who represent the root chakra and the one about whom not may be said would have to be at least the level of a logos of seven solar systems, not at the level of seven planetary logoi. Now, maybe I'm flying in the face of, a DK published statement. If so, bring it to my attention, because I'd be very interested to know, Barbara. But it's, logically it doesn't hold that seven planetary schemes. I mean, if the seven together form the Kulandara, or the base of the spine logos in a higher system, that would suggest that our solar system forms that. And we know our solar system forms the heart chakra in this next higher logoic group of seven solar systems. So all those things, if you can, unearth specifics, I would be interested to know what you come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're here. And finally here. Yeah. Yeah, we got to here. So to begin this session, we'll back up just a bit in order to get a sense of context. He actually really does turn the page here. If we ask why 10 schemes, and in effect 10 planets, 7 sacred and 3 concealed, It is because the 7 sacred planets are eventually merged into the 3, and finally the 3 are blended into the 1. So just a second here, excuse me. All right, okay. So the 3 synthesizing planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, right? The final 1 synthesizing planet, we're told, is Uranus, which then merges with the sun. All this is shown here in chart 6. The idea of 10 schemes, or which are 10 planetary schemes, suggests that the qualities of the 3 synthesizing planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, as synthesizing planets are so different from the qualities of these 3 planets as we know them, that these 3 synthesizing planets must be added to the 7 sacred planets, right? And they're literally different planets when they become synthesizing planets. They're not, their characteristics shifts once they began synthesizing these lesser planets. You could say the amalgam of the planets that are brought into their being changes their very nature, and they literally become something else, which is the 8th, 9th, and 10th of the 10 planets. This is in keeping with the idea expressed in the Tree of Life, which places the higher 3 sephira in a causal position to the lower 7. Any thoughts or questions about this? This final planetary synthesis at the end of the solar logoic incarnation mirrors the process in a human being where 7 chakras merge into 3 major centers, head, heart, and throat, which then merge into one unified field of consciousness. Indeed, these synthesizing planets are the head, heart, and throat centers of the solar logos at that high synthesizing time. Next. This can be traced along the line of analogy as we consider the 7 rays. These 7 rays, which in manifestation are diverse, are eventually synthesized. The minor 4 are blended, we are told, into the 3rd major ray, and the 3 major rays are finally merged into the one synthetic ray, the love-wisdom ray, the dragon of wisdom, the occult serpent swallowing its tail. This has been pointed out by HPB. We have, therefore, the 3 crowning rays, but 7 seen during the evolutionary process. So the rays of attribute are eventually synthesized by the 3rd ray of active intelligence, because these 4 lesser rays are temporary differentiations that represent the ways in which intelligence works out in form and in consciousness. Let's see. Yeah, these are, the way he's described them here adds understanding to the nature of the rays. So could we get a reader for this? Start here with the 4th ray and read vertically, and then read the 3rd ray.
Yeah, Barbara, you want to read?
Yes. So I begin with the 3rd ray, or you want me to go?
Read vertically from ray 4 to 7,
Okay.
and then read ray 3.
All right. Ray 4, harmony through conflict. Intelligence produces beauty and harmony by resolving opposites. Ray 5, concrete knowledge. Intelligence produces science, analysis, and factual knowledge. Ray 6, devotion. Intelligence produces focused aspiration and one-pointedness. Ray 7, ceremonial order. Intelligence produces rhythm, order, and the magical building of forms. Ray 3, active intelligence. Intelligence produces adaptability, creativity, and the capacity to shape matter into forms that serve divine purpose. It is the root ray of intelligence activity that expresses through the 4 rays of attribute. It is a great stream of energy that underlies all processes of manifestation. Through this ray, the divine idea is closed in substance, and the plan is carried forward by means of form.
Thank you, Barbara. In Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, DK says, the 4 rays of attribute seem separate during the personality phase of life. But at a higher turn of the spiral, the disciple realizes they are all functions of the one intelligent soul. The soul-infused initiate then realizes that the 3 major rays, will, love, wisdom, and intelligence, are themselves aspects of the second ray of love, wisdom, which is the dominant ray of this solar system. So once synthesized, the initiate uses the 3rd ray's qualities of adaptability and organization to order the lower vehicles so that they become transparent instruments for the soul. The monadically inspired initiate then realizes, at least in this solar system, that the 3 major rays, will, love, wisdom, intelligence, are themselves aspects of the second ray of love, wisdom. This is something we don't normally think so much about, the idea that the 3 major rays are in fact aspects of the second ray in this solar system, right? We actually have no idea of what pure ray 1 expression of will and power is. And the same thing about ray 3, even though ray 3 did characterize our last, or the first, I should say, in sequential order of the first solar system, sequentially speaking. That was a ray 3 solar system, and the next solar system will be a ray 1. But they are all, as it were, sub-rays of the second ray. And so that's also true even of these rays of attribute, right? They are in themselves related to or expressions of, ultimately, expressions of via the 3rd ray of the second ray of love, wisdom. The footnote referenced by the phrase, the occult serpent swallowing its tail, references 2 passages from the Secret Doctrine, where HPB tells us that the image of the serpent devouring its own tail, the Ouroboros, is a symbol of the eternal cycle of manifestation, symbol of cycles, right? Portrays the universe as self-contained, without beginning or end, moving through endless rounds of birth, growth, withdrawal, and re-emergence, right? In this sense, it is the emblem of cyclic law, the return of all things to their source, only to begin again on a higher turn of the spiral. The serpent forming a circle also signifies the unity of the one life. It from one point of view, it exists beyond space and time. All diversity, all rays and forms are enclosed within the boundless circle of spirit. The dragon of wisdom is thus the perfected synthesis of evolution, the many streams of energy reabsorbed into the one, the completion of the cosmic cycle. So we have a symbol of cyclic evolution and the seal, so to speak, of ultimate synthesis, the many swallowed up into the one, the circle closed through wisdom. Next. Could we get a reader, please?
Carol, you want to read?
Sure. In connection with the heavenly men functioning through the planets, there are therefore 3 planets which might be considered as synthesizing planets, and 4 which are blended eventually, until the 3 have absorbed the essence of the 4. Finally, the one absorbs the essence of the 3, and the work is completed. This process lies many millennia ahead. During the inevitable period of the gradual obscuration of our system, 4 of the heavenly men find their magnetic opposites and fuse and blend. First, this takes place between themselves, the negative and the positive rays merging and fusing, forming then the 2 from the 4. Again, the 2 merge, producing a united whole, and the 1 thus produced blends with the major 3rd ray, the intelligent aspect, the ray represented in our planetary hierarchy by the Machachoan.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Okay, so first, in connection with the heavenly men functioning through the planets, there are therefore 3 planets which might be considered as synthesizing planets, and 4 which are blended eventually, until the 3 have absorbed the essence of the 4. Finally, the 1 absorbs the essence of the 3, and the work is completed. So let's again turn to Michael Robbins for an explanation of this phase of the text. Could we get a reader, please? This is actually going to be 2 readers.
Ron, do you want to read?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The 3 are referenced through synthesizing planets, are usually referenced also as sacred planets. As a result, we have a picture of at least 10 sacred planets. How can we explain this? Perhaps in this way. By the time the merging planets, those which are now non-sacred planets, may be sacred, and the synthesizing planets will be the 3 greater planets accepting or absorbing them. In this pattern or absorption, we are reminded of the Kabbalah and its tree of life, in which diagram a greater 3 hover over a lesser 7. In the structure of planetary change, these 3 perhaps superior chains can be considered hidden within the structure of a planetary scheme. Does this division of 7 and 3 have a systemic analogy within 3? Perhaps a superplanetary scheme hidden within the structure of the solar logoic scheme? We note above that DK, in speaking of planets, says there are 7 sacred and 3 concealed. This is most mysterious because the planets we call the synthesizing planets are not concealed. Really, there are 4 levels of planetary functioning in any solar system, and all must be accounted for when considering the process of absorption. The non-sacred planets, the sacred planets, the synthesizing planets, and the three super entities expressing themselves through three planetary logoic each. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Ron. And next, please.
Do you need another reader?
Yes.
Helio, you want to read?
Yes. Yeah. Mhm. So I start on the second column on this page, right? Yeah.
We must always ask ourselves.
Mhm. We must always ask ourselves the question, and in fact, DK states it is a presently unanswerable question. Are the three present in the seven or extraneous to the seven? Four numbers are to be considered in this process of understanding absorption or obscuration, not only the three, the seven, and the 10, but also the 12. For eventually there will be 12 planets, and eventually all of them will be sacred to a degree certainly in this solar system, and perhaps fully sacred in the next, though we still have plenty of time in the solar system for the non-sacred planetary rulers of some of the 12 signs to develop into sacred planets. Do I continue?
Please.
So much depends upon what we really mean by a sacred planet. For there are planets which are sacred in part, and those which are entirely sacred. Take our non-sacred planet, Earth, for instance. When it takes its fifth in a series of 7 minor initiations, it will be the sacred in a way, but as it has not yet, as an entire planetary scheme, taken its second cosmic initiation, will it be fully sacred when taking its fifth minor initiation? When we use the term sacred planet, the term planet may mean the planetary scheme in its entirety, or it may refer to a chain or even to a globe. The term sacred planet, therefore, can be considered rather blinded. MDR commentary on TCF.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, there's deep ponderings that can be considered in these as to the nature of how the synthesis goes about, the 7 into 3, and then, we take into account that there are a lot more than 7 or even 10 planets, and early in esoteric astrology, DK tells us there's 115 either etheric or physical planets in the solar system, right? So which ones are marked to become sacred, which are just developing during this particular solar system? We don't have the answers to that because they're not provided. But we can speculate about it, which Michael has done here. One thing that's become real clear is that there are definitely, finally speaking, 7 sacred planets because they have their monads in the Great Bear. So, will, the 9, quote unquote, 10, 12 planets that we know physically exist in this solar system, when they eventually become sacred, and they all will, including Pluto and Mars and the Earth, which at this point are not sacred, will they enter the ranks of those sacred planets? Well, it doesn't seem that they will ever become those seven, you could say, archetypal sacred planets who have their monads in the Great Bear. Possibly what happens there is that is through synthesis, for instance, the Earth being synthesized into the Venus scheme, that there is an amalgam that is represented by, one of those seven planets. But anyway, more questions and answers on this subject. Next, this process lies many millennia ahead, talking about synthesis, during the inevitable period of the gradual obscuration of our system. Okay, a millennium is 1,000 years. It would seem that the process of synthesis and obscuration actually lies billions, if not trillions, of years ahead. Since the life of the solar logos is 311 trillion, 80 billion years. It's an understatement. Next, 4 of the heavenly men find their magnetic opposites and fuse and blend. First, this takes place between themselves, the negative and the positive rays merging and fusing, forming then the 2 from the 4. Okay, so the 4 heavenly men here described represent the solar logoic lower quaternary, right? Magnetic opposites may mean that the negative or soft line ray planets and their positive hard line ray counterparts merge. Alternately, the terms positive and negative may refer to a merging of the chakras above and below the solar logoic diaphragm, represented by various pairs of planets, such as Earth and Venus. We're taught, for instance, that in our own process of synthesizing our chakras, that the sacral center merges into the throat center, energetically speaking. It's really more of a transfer of energy, and that the solar plexus transfers its energy to the heart center. So, it would hold, if we do the as above so below principle, that the same thing would take place in these final stages during this process of synthesis. One of the problems in determining the specific planets involved, as well as the progression of these planetary mergings, is that we don't know which of these mergings have already taken place before the mergings here being described, right? The merging into that happened through Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. For example, in esoteric astrology, DK tells us that there are something like 115 planetary bodies, both dense and etheric, that make up our solar system, all of which we can only assume are subject to the laws of synthesis and therefore must have a polar counterpart. So when he talks about these 4, what has already merged before these 4 become 2, through merging? So we're getting more of a description of a principle here than of any specific planets. Next. Again, the 2 merge, producing a united whole, and the one thus produced blends with the major 3rd ray, the intelligence aspect, the ray represented in our planetary hierarchy by the Mahachohan. So DK is still describing the merging of the planets that represent the lower quaternary, the representing the rays of attribute, right? We can only speculate as to the identity of the 4, which merges into the 2, but we know that Saturn, here in the middle, is the final representative planet of these lower 4. and since it represents a third ray, it's not hard to imagine that it is this synthetic planet for the lower quaternary. The question that MDR speculates on is this the same Saturn that is now one of the 7 sacred planets? Or does a new planet, a new super Saturn, form as a result of the planets that it assimilates, right? So if, next time you talk to DK, you might ask that question. Next up, we finish the commentary on question 2. Could we get a reader, please?
Ariane, you want to read?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you calling on?
Yeah, Ariane.
Ariane, can you read?
Ariane Eroy. Not Irina.
No, okay, good.
That's Helio.
Thank you.
Not Irene, but Ariane.
Thank you.
Are you there, Ariane?
I am, but the mute was just put on, so I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem.
So the fusion will proceed until ultimately unity is reached in the system, and the Son has accomplished his purpose. He has perfected love, wisdom. His light shines forth cosmically. His magnetic radiance touches the periphery of his cosmic opposite, and the marriage of the Son is effected. The two cosmic units merge. If we here naturally ask which is the cosmic unit that is our solar opposite, we shall be told that that question lies hid for the present, though it is hinted at in the secret doctrine and in other sacred books. A hint lies concealed in the relationship of the Pleiades to our Earth, but not until a further precession of the equinoxes will it be more fully seen what is the exact relationship involved.
Go ahead. Read the footnote. I'll read the footnote. Students might compare the following references and then form their own conclusions. And then we get a series of references from both volumes of the Secret Doctrine. Okay, so first, so the fusion will proceed until ultimately unity is reached in the system, and the Son, S-O-N, has accomplished his purpose. Remember, the purpose of the indweller is always accomplished through the experience gained at the level of form, which for the SON solar logos is the sun and it's the solar system, the sun and the 7 sacred planets. He has perfected love wisdom. His light shines forth cosmically. His magnetic radius touches the periphery of his cosmic opposite, and the marriage of the Son, S-O-N, is effected. So through this fusion, we have the final consummation of solar evolution. The solar logos as the S-O-N achieves perfected love wisdom and unites with his cosmic opposite. At this point, all his planetary schemes and rays are blended into one harmonious whole. For the solar logos, now an embodiment of the second aspect, has brought forth perfected love wisdom through the medium of matter, and thus shines forth as a fully radiant expression of the Christ principle on a cosmic scale. In addition, his perfected radiance extends far enough to contact his cosmic opposite, presumably a logos of equal or greater magnitude, who also must have gained the same level of becoming in order to be able to engage in this fusion. Next, the two cosmic units merge. If we here naturally ask, which is the cosmic unit that is our solar opposite, we shall be told that that question lies hid in the present, though it is linked at, it is hinted at in the Secret Doctrine and other sacred books. Okay, so in the Secret Doctrine, HPB notes that all heavenly bodies have their twin, and that binary or paired systems are a universal law, just as polarity governs all levels of manifestation. Sirius is a cosmic counterpart or higher logos to our system, though DK never directly equates Sirius with the above described cosmic opposite of the solar logos. The main takeaway here is that all evolution is relational. Atoms, humans, planets, and solar systems all evolve through polarity and eventual synthesis. It's fascinating to consider how this polarity manifests in a human kingdom, of which marriage is very probably the symbol. Do we have a true esoteric soulmate with whom we merge at a certain initiation? If so, DK makes no mention of it. Or does this merging take place with a member of the Davic kingdom at the sixth initiation, which DK does briefly mention? Barbara, you have your hand up.
Yes, my question is about the difference of initiation and merging. And the difference of initiation and fusing. Is initiation preliminary to fusing?
It is itself a form of fusing. For instance, it's very much related with the fusing of the various triangles that make up the Kundalini, right? It even promotes that, or you could say intensifies the circulation of the fire that results in the fusing of those triangles. And then at the fourth initiation, we have the fusing, you could say, or synthesis of the lower seven, which are the chakras, into the spirit, the fire of spirit. And then we are, let's see, translated is the term DK uses, onto the Buddhic plane. And our triplicity then, instead of the manasic, astral, and physical planes, becomes Atma, Buddhi, Manas, right? And then, of course, the fusing continues with each initiation. Greater levels of the awareness on the cosmic physical plane are gained until at the sixth initiation we are reabsorbed. That is the journeyer, what's the word I want? The pilgrim. The pilgrim comes home. He's reabsorbed into the monad at the sixth initiation, which is another fusion. And then you have, the fusion of along the way of groups of souls into greater and greater groups of souls. And I'm sure that on a higher turn of the spiral, groups of monads, singular monads into groups of monads that form greater levels of consciousness.
So we know the planetary logos is going through initiations.
Right.
So is this then a process of fusion that these series of initiations create a merging and a fusion?
Yeah, actually, you put your finger on it in the beginning. It's a preparation for this final fusing. For instance, possibly for a human being, it would be that merging of the human with the Deva kingdom at the sixth initiation that represents this polar opposite. And for a planet, these lesser initiations, where the Earth has taken its fourth and is preparing to take its fifth minor initiation, and it's taken its second and is preparing to take its third major initiation, will prepare it almost certainly, well, really no doubt, for fusion with its polar opposite. We can see that certainly with Earth's fusion in Venus, which has already taken, it is a sacred planet and has taken the third cosmic initiation. And so we would, when we reach that stage, possibly that will mark the time when we are able to fuse with Venus, or it could be that we still maintain our duality for a time, and other developments must come to pass before that final synthetic fusion. It's not even a final. It would be an intermediate planetary synthesis that would take place before a final synthesis, because DK tells us that Venus, for instance, is synthesized into Neptune, so I would guess that we first are synthesized with Venus before that final or later synthesis into Neptune, right? All of these would have, I would think, initiations that are preparatory to those fusings. And possibly the fusing happened at the time of those initiations. We're just not told. More and more as you go deeper into this material, you realize that these sentences in a treatise on cosmic fire are like chapter headings. We just don't get the chapter, because it would be a 200,000 page document if we did, if everything was further explained. But, at first it seems like, oh, there's just so much overwhelming information. And then you realize that every piece of information given, there's a whole unexplained levels that relate to that piece of information. Anything else, Barbara? Did that answer your question?
Yes, it both answered my question now and my earlier question, because I had confused initiation with fusion.
Right. Right. Well, it's just hypothesis, but the two are deeply interrelated. Whether they're identical or not is another question. Then I think you would have to identify the nature of the fusion in order to understand the synthesis that takes place at initiation. Yes, Tom.
I was trying to get a formula out of this. So does this mean that it goes like this, that you always have the polar opposite on the same horizontal level, and then you fuse with that, and then the synthesizing happens on the higher level, which means that on that level you also have a horizontal opposite and then it goes on and on. So always there's an opposite on the same horizontal level.
Well, I'm not sure it's horizontal because polarities are inherently positive and negative, which have the sense of, representing within a specific framework, spirit and matter. So, for instance, our alter ego is Venus, which is definitely would represent a higher polarity to us. Um, but you have to look at these at scheme levels rather than the levels of the uh, of the progress made so far. So ultimately, Earth and Venus are polar opposites that will fuse, but are they horizontal or are they vertical? And then when coming together, see, I just don't know the answer to that question, except to say that polarity in a way is inherently vertical because you have the positive, negative, or the spirit form aspect to that. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, let's see where we are here. All right, so I talked about. All right, next up. A hint lies concealed in the relationship of the Pleiades to our Earth, but not until a further precession of the equinoxes will it be more fully seen what is the exact relationship involved. This is one of those extraordinarily esoteric statements that's just embedded in the material, right? Since we're trying to determine the identity of our solar system's polar opposite, why does DK tie the hint of that identity to the Pleiades' relationship to the Earth rather than its relationship to the solar system? Right? If he'd said here, hint lies concealed in the relationship of the Pleiades to our solar system, well, that would make sense. But to our Earth? So, and the hint that we're after is the relationship of our solar logos to its polar opposite. So it becomes an extraordinary statement and really lifts the importance of our Earth in its relationship to the Pleiades. Yeah, very puzzling. As to the phrase "a further precession of the equinoxes," MDR suggests that, quote, it is as if our vernal equinox must once more align with Taurus and thus with the Pleiades before the mystery will be revealed. And that's a good insight because it could be pointing to a period in the evolution of the solar logos when there is this particular aligning on Earth, and that somehow that would reveal, give us a hint as to the solar system's polar opposite. By the way, and this is kind of a news flash, some of you have probably learned this, the astronomers have recently discovered that the Pleiades star cluster is only the bright core of a much larger stellar family, which as a result of this discovery is now called the Greater Pleiades Complex. Using two NASA telescopes, scientists found thousands of hidden sibling stars, making the cluster about 20 times larger than previously thought. So it's interesting. That seemed to be the right place to talk about the discovery here, where DK gives us this enigmatic statement, all right, in terms concerning the relationship of the Pleiades to our Earth. At any rate, finally, we have the footnote. Students might compare the following references and then form their own conclusions. So we could spend the next 3 webinars trolling through all these references. I'm only going to cite what, in my view, are the most salient points. In Volume 1, page 439, HPB describes the classical myth of the 7 rishis of the Great Bear and their 7 Pleiadic wives, whose union merges the life aspect, Ursa Major, and substance, the Pleiades, thus suggesting that the merging of life and substance may also characterize the macrocosmic marriage between our solar logos and its cosmic counterpart, whatever that may be. In Volume 2, page 830, puts the Pleiades within a lineage that conditions our planetary schemes and humanity through mind. This is echoed on page 581, which suggests that their role is to provide an energetic field wherein mind, the mind aspect, evolves. On page 371, HPB names gives the names of the cosmic triangle of Sirius, Pleiades, the sun, which DK tells us conditions the solar logos and its planetary schemes. The bottom line in all these references, we learn what may be some of the conditioning aspects that connect our solar logos to its opposite, but absolutely no clues as to the identity of that opposite. The seemingly undecipherable phrase just cited, a hint lies concealed in the relationship of the Pleiades to our Earth, is the only statement in all the blue books and the secret doctrine that addresses this relationship, the relationship between the solar logos and its opposite. Okay, any thoughts or questions? Do one of you intuit the solar logos is opposite? If so, make sure and let us all know. Okay, next up, question 3. We just finished question 2, what is evolution and how does it proceed? Now we move on to question 3 from DK's 9 introductory questions. Why is this solar system evolving along the lines of duality? So could we get a reader here, starting with the problem of existence?
Janet, you want to read?
The problem of existence. The third question involves one of the most difficult problems in metaphysics and covers in its consideration the whole perplexing mystery of the reason why there is objectivity at all. It is one that has been asked under different forms by men of every school of thought, by religious people who inquire, why did God create at all? Why is existence forced upon one and all? By scientists in their search for the ultimate truth and in their endeavor to find out the motivation of all that is seen and to account for a sensuous life. By philosophers in their equally diligent search to an animating subjectivity that is expressing itself through all the moral and ethical sciences in every civilization and among every people.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, first, the problem of existence. The third question involves one of the most difficult problems in metaphysics and covers in its consideration the whole perplexing mystery of the reason why there is objectivity at all. So with this question, we'll be considering why the solar system manifests as a series of opposites, subject and object, life and form, spirit and matter, instead of remaining uniform and thus unmanifest. Next, it is the question, that has been asked under different forms by men of every school of thought, by religious people who inquire, why did God create it all? Why is existence forced upon one and all? So from a religious point of view, we might ask, if God is perfect, why would he create an imperfect world? And why should all beings be compelled to participate in existence with its suffering, limitation, and struggle? At this point, we're just going to ask the questions. Next, by scientists in their search for the ultimate truth and in their endeavor to find out the motivation of all that is seen and to account for sensuous life. So scientists probe for underlying laws, constants, and principles that explain why the universe behaves as it does. Beyond mechanics, science implicitly seeks causation and purpose. Even when couched in material terms, the drive is always to uncover what motivates or drives phenomena, whether that be energy, force, or deeper unifying principles. Next, by philosophers in their equally diligent search for that animating subjectivity that is expressing itself through all the moral and ethical sciences in every civilization and among every people. So the philosophical query is, what motivates phenomena? What is the animating subjectivity, the inner principle of consciousness that expresses itself through moral, ethical, and cultural life across all civilizations? Okay. Any thoughts or questions so far about these three levels? Okay, next up, he continues the list.
There was a question posed. It's
Okay,
in the
yes.
chat.
Oh,
In the
okay, good.
chat.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it to my attention, because what does DK mean by God here? The planetary logos, the solar logos, the absolute about which, and it, okay, and in which context? In this, you mean, does he say it here? Does he say God? Yeah, why did God create it all? Okay, so this would be religious. It's because he's putting it in the mouths, the question in the mouths of religious people of all times. He's going to be talking about a kind of ultimate God, often who's personified entity, right? Not so much a metaphysical God or a solar logos. So he's using the word God here in relation to this question as posed by religious peoples of the world and in all times, right? This, you could say, final authority. Why did this final authority force existence upon, his subjects, right? And forced upon one and all. It's not so much like a theosophical God, which is often considered to be the solar logos. It's like a regional God, right? And ultimately is the absolute. But that's, I don't believe, what is meant here, since it's used by quote unquote religious people.
So are you saying, Francis, it's just a thought form, actually? It's not, because it's so ambiguous. I mean, the idea of God is just, I mean, it's hard to know. And that's it seems to be why Buddha said we cannot speak of God, that not that God did not exist, but that we cannot fathom or understand or give language to this. So it's just, when people say they pray to God, I'm wondering,
They're really trying to, yeah.
yeah, and I just wonder how DK uses it. That's where the question is going also, in contrast to the confusion that,
Well,
ordinary.
that's easier to answer. How does DK use the term God? First of all, he doesn't generally use the term. He's more specific because it could mean uh, uh, anything from the solo logos, to the one about whom not may be said, to the absolute, which is the source of universal manifestation, and there's many intermediate levels. You could see it as the first logos, this the mirroring of the absolute in the form world at the very highest level. Yeah, so it's a very inexact term, and DK tends to use more specific language, though occasionally he will use the term, and you just have to read it in context to what he's saying at that time. In this particular context, it's the religious God, and that would vary widely. If you're talking about the Christian God, you're talking about the Jewish God. um, Buddhists, uh, from one point of view, is more a philosophy than a religion, because it doesn't, ontology is not really its thing. It doesn't talk so much about levels of being as about consciousness. So yeah. Anyway.
Wait, so I have a couple more questions to follow up. So this thing like Yahweh or the Christian God or Shiva, Lakshmi, Vishnu, do these gods exist as energies, or are they just human thought forms then?
Well, I think they exist as beings, and that they're great Dion Chohans at widely and wildly different levels. For instance, Jehovah is just a creator God that Blavatsky equates with the Sephiroth Bina, which is the something along the line of Zeus, the level of Zeus, a very much a creator God, not a transcendent God at all, but a Brahma-like creator God. And then you have you know other beings that you mentioned, which do represent the spirit aspects, such as Shiva, which is the pure spirit aspect. So it's an absolutely enormous topic, which would be to theosophically identify the proximal nature of all the gods used by all religions and philosophies. You're going to have a huge variety there. Often that variety is not recognized by the specific body that uses the term. For instance, the Christians are very specific about their use of the term God, and it doesn't. It's not indicative of. In other words, how do I say this? It's ultimate in their own understanding. And therefore it's not a question of degrees. You don't move progressively through a series of septenaries towards Godhead. There's us and there's God, and that is a very benighted philosophy, that understanding.
Wait, so who is that God of the Christians? Are you saying you're conflating Jesus and some kind of God who's his father, not Sanat Kumara? You're saying that's
Christians don't recognize Sanat Kumara. They're not going to say, "I pray to my planetary logos." They don't they don't have any understanding. I think it's a personified, vague understanding of uh, uh, all those qualities that are attributed to the divine. Right? In other words, there's no ontology. There's no hierarchy of understanding about Godhead in the Christian realm. Now, interestingly, the Catholic faith has some sense of hierarchy, through its domains and angelic kingdoms and Sephiroth, and but for the most part, God is just seen as a transcendent whole one that doesn't have parts.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I just have to clarify this. So you just we're not acknowledging that there are different modes or ways of being, but it seems like in this conversation that you attribute some of these ideas to aspects of gods and others to like independent spiritual entities. Is that true? Or are you just saying that this is, the way I think about it these days is that everything's in a state of being and becoming, so is evolving. And so
Well,
they're
both can be
very,
true. Both can be true. You can be in a state, we're specific beings, and we are also in a state of evolving and becoming. And that's true of everything in the universe, right? So, but at a certain point, an energetic formulation, or you could call it even intelligent energy, is a more accurate description of the persona involved that we're giving a specific name to, because we just tend to, because we live in separate bodies walking around on the earth, we have a very inaccurate understanding of what singularity is, of what of an individual actually is. I mean, what is our true self? It's our soul, and yet souls don't have singular or individual consciousness. Their consciousness is group consciousness. So how can they be individual? Well, it's only from our perspective that they're individual. And that's just the next level up, right? That's just, we're just looking at the three highest subplanes of the mental plane, for that level of identity. But we can't get away from singularizing and individualizing identity, right?
yeah, that's really interesting. And then the last question is, are you equating the solar logos with the biblical phrase, the one of which not
No,
can be said?
no.
What is that? Who is that? The one who not whom not can be said?
The one about whom not may be said is, let me go back up here. Where are we here? 51. Okay. We'll go all the way back up here to this chart. So here we are at the solar systemic level, right? That's our solar system, one of these dots. It belongs to a logos that contains within itself 7 solar systems. That being belongs to a greater logos that contains within itself 7 of those greater logoi. That being, etc. Going up, we don't know at what level the one about whom not may be said occurs. So it's either at 2 or 3 levels beyond this a logos of 7 solar systems that we come to the one about not whom not may be said. I've really tried to figure this out, and it's like it's purposely deleted the interstitial tissue that connects that level with a logos of 7 solar systems. In a way, it's not important. It's either 2 or 3 levels that take you to that level, but certainly it's far beyond a single solar logos. There are thousands of stars involved in the one about whom not may be said. Okay? Okay, you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so here we are. Okay, we'll pick up next time. Continue exploring this list of descriptions.